Hi, B.
Hey, Carlos.
How are you?
Good.
Man, how's your week so far? Let's just start there.
My week has been fantastic.
Yeah?
Hectic, but fantastic. I had Court of Appeal in the morning.
Okay.
And then I had Lobatse in the afternoon.
Yo, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Is it okay if we talk about it? I don't want to know advertiser.
You know, exactly.
We have to talk about it.
Yes.
Man, so I remember when I first met you. This was about a year and a half ago.
What?
Yeah.
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Probably even longer, actually. Maybe 2 years. Yeah, almost 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, you're this amazing, insane lawyer. And you're telling me how you're working at this other law firm. I'm like, okay. I guess maybe comfortable experience, you know. And then from here, she'll get onto her own thing. And then after that, you move on to another law firm. I'm like, okay, I guess a bit more experience, whatever. And then I discovered recently that you started your own thing. You went out and you're out here solo in these streets.
Yeah, look, don't gas me up. Don't say I'm this amazing lawyer, because next thing I'll be there with my huge ego going, yeah, Carlos, I'm this amazing lawyer.
No, so but yeah, man, congratulations. So you have your own law firm now.
Yes.
Tell us about that. How did that, yeah.
You know, it's bittersweet, right?
Okay.
It's bittersweet in the sense that it's a big achievement to open your own law firm. And that's the sweet aspect. But the bitter aspect is that because we opened in July last year, 2024. The bitter part of it is that because I've been engaged in so much setting up and running things on my own, getting to know the administrative part and accounting part of things, I haven't had a lot of time to be able to do my social media. So I've been meeting so many people who are like, Bonolo, Kai.
Where's the content?
The other day, his wife, I'm like, no, it's not even that. It's setting up the law firm and getting to learn how to run your own shop. But I think because, you know, as we're starting this podcast, which we're hoping will be a success, I'm getting into the role of doing social media again.
Okay.
Yeah, because the other day I posted and one of my followers is like, my lawyer, you're back.
You're back, yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I'm back. I've got a lot of surprises coming for Botswana Thinking Law, and one of them is this podcast.
Man, I'll say, I think I speak to everyone who follows your stuff on social media. We're very happy you have your own shop now, because I don't know, I always felt kind of some type of way, Malolo, when you're here rocking as hard as you're rocking, and then when it's time to give out your contact, you're like, yeah, call this law firm. I'm like, all this money must be coming. Anyway, so why did you decide to start up your own thing, and how's it been so far?
So I decided to start up my own shop because when you are working for somebody else, you tend not to be able to take the cases that you necessarily want. In the sense that, you know, sometimes you find clients that are good paying clients, and then sometimes you find clients that have a very good case, but they don't have the financial backing to deal with those cases. So when you're working for someone else, they might not always have an appetite to take on clients who have good cases, but they don't have the financial backing. So in opening up my own law firm, I wanted to have that ability to assess, to say, okay, no, this one client, 100 pula. So in that 100 pula, I can survive for like 2 weeks, and it will make me able to assist this other client who has a good case, but not a lot of good financial backing.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And that's something you've always been passionate about.
That's something I've always been passionate about. You know, there's something in the works again. But currently I'm always in motion. I can't talk about it now. But hopefully with passage of time, then when things come together, I'd be like, hey, you remember that thing I was talking about?
Here we go.
Here it is.
And this podcast, by the way, this is a year in the making.
Yes.
Because when we spoke about it recently, we need to do this thing. We'd spoken about it before, about a year ago. And when I went into our chats, our conversation, literally, we tried to record on the 17th of Jan
What?
last year.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
That is fantastic.
so this podcast was written in the stars. It had to happen.
Absolutely.
Botswana Thinking Law podcast. Tell us about it. Why?
Okay, so I think for me, the podcast came about when I was doing a lot of radio, right?
Okay, yeah.
I realized that when I'm doing my other social media platforms, it is just me saying what I understand the law to be for people to appreciate and for people to go and do their research. But when I was doing radio and you and I were on radio, I realized that when I am there in my socials talking, it's an echo chamber of myself, right? So there are certain questions that would come out in the comments, or certain questions that you would raise when we were talking. In my mind, I'd be like, hey, I actually never thought of that. So I thought the podcast would be fantastic because it would enable you to be the everyday person who's not a legal practitioner and be able to have a discussion with me where we talk about the law. And I say, okay, the law says this about this. And you're like, but what about this aspect? Not being a person who is in practice. Yeah.
Yeah. And those conversations we used to have on air, some of the stuff that you thought was just basic common knowledge used to blow my mind. And I'd get responses from people as well. Yo, you guys were talking about this thing like it's nothing, but it literally changed my life. Like, I've been dealing with this thing, and now just literally 5-minute conversation, it's changed everything.
Yes.
So these conversations are very necessary. So we're saying with this podcast, we're basically talking about Botswana, different things. On radio, I remember we didn't touch on criminal law.
Yes.
But because we have more time here, we can do more research, we can bring guests here.
Exactly.
We can expand on a lot of these things. And again, because it's just us talking for close to an hour, we can talk. There's plenty of time for us to talk. We don't have to worry about
the views and opinions expressed on this show.
Look, I can do all sorts of podcasts in my life. Radio is my first love. Okay, I can make fun of radio all I want. That's my first love. So, okay. What's the format going to be like? Are we just taking questions from people every day randomly? Or do we have a topic that we're discussing? Or is it, okay, there's this thing that's burning on social media right now, let's find a legal angle to it? What is it going to be?
So I think it's a fusion of having discussions about the burning issues that we see happening on social media, but we also have structured discussions in relation to certain topics in law, right? Because certain topics in law don't necessarily come up on social media as a burning issue or in everyday conversation. Until Bonolo then says to you, hey, Carlos, do you have a will, right? That's when you're like, oh, and then people then start to say, hey, like I'm not, and that is what generates the conversation. So it will be more of a balance to say, okay, we have this thing that's on social media, let's talk about it from a legal angle, but also have set structured topics. So even with discussions, we can look at comments, we can find and see if maybe one show a month, we can then say, okay, there've been these 70 comments in relation to this topic, discuss those comments. And at some point in time, we might even start with lives from every now and then for people to be able to participate.
Okay.
At least that's my vision of how things will be.
No, now I'm just a normal layman. I'm just here.
Please don't say layman. I once said layman to someone and they lost it.
They were offended?
Yes, they were. Because, sometimes when we use certain language, we tend not to give context to that language.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm excited. I'm excited to have these conversations with you. It's honestly not about me. It's really about Molao. And you are helping us understand these things. I think it's very important for us to mention also that the things we'll be talking about, it's not legal advice. We're having conversations and we still say, go find legal representation to break down these things that we'll be talking about.
Exactly.
GBV, that's something that's been burning.
Yes.
Child maintenance, that's something that's very close to my heart because, you know, there's a lot of things that don't make sense to me over there.
Yes.
But let's start here. Let's start here with something light, you know, something, it's very important. All of these things are very, very important, but it's something a bit light that I feel like, you know, would be great for us to start off this podcast on. And it's something that's trending right now. Just yesterday on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, hey, I'm gonna need to get used to the podcasting rules and principles because now I'm thinking we're on radio. So I said Tuesday. No, this thing is airing. Is airing on,
it's airing on Monday.
On Monday, okay. So schools opened last week.
Just put in the date. They opened 2012 or whatever.
Exactly. There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So
schools opened recently, and it's been a conversation on social media. School fees.
Yes.
Which schools to take my kid to? You know, my kid didn't do really well last year at this school. I want to move them over here. And parents look at different things when they want to take their kids to school. They look at the uniform, the pass rate, etc.
Yeah.
And then there's something that I saw recently that caught my attention. It was actually a post on X.
Yes.
And it was by a lady called Tandeka. She wrote, private schools are always celebrating getting 100% pass rate each year. Like we don't know how they do it.
Yes.
And then she puts a laughing face at the end.
I think I actually saw that tweet, and I think the person is South African.
South African, yes.
Yeah.
So I go under, I'm like, what are they doing? What are they doing? So I'm always excited when I find out the private school guys are doing some other stuff. I'm like, yeah, what are they doing? What are they doing? So I wanted to find out, and I went on the post, and guys were talking about something that I thought, okay, this is a South African thing. And then when I spoke to you about it, you're like, no, there's something that's happening in Botswana as well.
Yes, allegedly.
Allegedly, yes. Allegedly. So this is something that's happening in Botswana. Examination fraud. You will break it down in the legal terms, or what is it? Please explain to me, and I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to get sued. If they come for you, so you break it down and give us an idea of apparently, allegedly, this is what some schools are doing.
Yes. So Botswana Examinations Council actually has an act.
Okay.
And something called examination malpractice.
Okay.
Which is effectively is against the examinations regulations. We tend to go towards dishonesty by students. Drive.
Yes.
No, drive. I don't know if they still call it drive,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Where the children or students would be writing on their laps, on their hands, and all these.
Back of the calculator.
You know,
I
some small paper put into a whole sheet and things of that nature.
Apparently, I hear that's what they do.
Oh, really?
That's what they do. Yeah.
But then one thing that we tend never to discuss, or I see it discussed in very specific or few instances, is examination malpractice on the part of the goal. And I say this because, you know, this is the beginning of the year. People are looking for schools, like you said, and one of the things that people look at is the pass rate.
Yeah.
But at the end of the year, no the exam.
Yeah.
And what you find what some schools do is that they will, number one, either force for a student to be transferred from the school. Okay. So, it's a school, it's form 4 or form 5. Form 4 first term, form 5 first term. Performance but the parent or guardian and almost squeeze them, you know, or push them to transfer the student out of the school because performance.
Okay.
Right? Or what they do is they register the student as a private candidate for examinations. So now school and say wearing uniform school and doing all sorts of things, but come exam time, under the banner, the school, or as a private candidate. Why? Because of the nature of the performance that the school considers to be low, the school then doesn't want that child's performance to actually affect their overall performance at the school. So high school we have 100% pass rate, right? And maybe when you compare Form 5, because Form 5 is our standard BGCSE, IGCSE exam writing times, right?
Yeah.
And here we're mainly talking about private schools. I haven't heard about it happening at public schools.
Okay.
You find where at the beginning of the year or at the end of first term, maybe there were 100 students. At the end of the school year, there are 75 students.
Okay, so let's start with the nudging the parent to transfer the kid.
Yes.
How do they do it? What do they say to the parent? Like, I'm trying to understand, because if my kid is struggling, shouldn't you be the one to help my kid instead of you saying, well, hey, your kid is struggling, figure something out? Where do they advise them to take them to? Other schools?
Sometimes you find where banabateng are taken to other schools. Sometimes banabateng are taken to government schools, right? So now imagine a situation where are being taken from private schools and are transferred to government schools, right? Then it makes it look like government schools are not performing, but that then is a consequence of students being dumped from private schools to government schools. Right? And that becomes examination malpractice, in my opinion, right? And people are free to go read the laws to understand, because what it then does is it gives a distorted picture of the performance of the school, right? So because Pasaron, I think, is a C. So if you have all the students, Babadirang Form 5, all getting a C, B, A, and all sorts, then it makes it seem as if Skolosel really, really does a good job in teaching Bana. But what in fact they're doing is they then offloading children that they don't believe are performing students.
So what do parents say when you're told Horoke Ngwana is going to be registered as a private student? And I remember this private student thing. I don't recall it very well, but I remember even when we were writing Form 3, Form 5 in public school, there would be kids who maybe had dropped out earlier because of whatever reason, and now they're coming back to write the exams privately or independently. But what I want to understand is, I'm paying all this money to you, right? Privately or independently, the kid now doesn't become an alumni of that school, right? Because it doesn't come in your certificate or you were writing at the school, right? So I'm paying all this money for my kid to be an alumni of your school, and then at the end
I don't know. I haven't seen the certificates like recently. It's been ages since I've been in school. And by school, I mean like primary and senior school, right? So I don't know whether the school appears on the certificate or not. But one of the things is that how is someone a private school, a certain level of education, and for your child to get instruction early, right? And if schools are allowed to, I don't know what others say, to not properly instruct students at some point in time, these students performing, we won't keep them on our roster so that we can then claim to have a 95 or 70% pass rate and so on. Because aside from that, right? Because the parent will say, oh, really? This particular school in a 95% pass rate, higher who compare national records. Indeed, the school has a 95% pass rate, but they don't know what has happened at the back to make sure that pass rate is so high.
Okay, so this.
And I'm not saying all private schools do this.
No, 100%. Well, but as we said, with this podcast, we're just having conversations. People will do their own research. Figure themselves out. So this to me seems like it's an oxymoron, a victimless crime. But it can't be. If it's a crime, there's got to be a victim, right? So you break it down a little bit where you mention Hore, now it gives the perception that the school is doing much better than it is. But grand bigger picture, what's the problem with a little bit of, you know, the
you know what the issue is? For me, there are multiple issues from a parent guardian perspective and then also from a student perspective, right? So from a parent guardian perspective, Ganawa Boduela school fees. Mahal. And that's why we saw on social media, people are like, hey, these school fees, right?
Yeah.
And then imagine all of the school fees, is registering as a private candidate, so that they're not under the banner of the school. School fees right? Number two, from the student perspective, because right? Or you need to get your grades to this point, otherwise you write as a private candidate. And that makes a student feel what is the word? You know, and for some students that are being forced to transfer, it's the same thing. Well, you know, you're not good enough for us.
For us, yeah.
So hitela go pele.
Wait, Bonolo, this whole time I'm thinking this is all happening like very much cloak and dagger. Like even when the school calls the parent, they just kind of give them excuses. This is why I wanted to understand. What do they say to the parent for them to transfer the kid? But if you're saying it's actually mentioned in some instances, well, no, you have to keep your marks over here, my boy.
There are consequences, yes. So there are some people who it happens cloak and dagger.
Yeah.
And there are some people, because especially for secondary school, they're old enough to understand.
Yeah.
And therefore, how say private candidate.
Okay, so I'm a parent right now. I'm looking at putting my kid in a school. I got the 100% rate for the last 20 years. And now I'm wondering, what is this really real? Is there a way I can verify? Is there a way I can check?
You know what? I think schools are supposed to submit their records.
Okay.
And the reason why I say they're supposed to submit their records is because, especially for private schools, there's number classes primary school have to be this size to this size, classes secondary school have to be this size to this size, right? So you have to make sure that your classes are compliant with that, right? Meaning when you submit our fees, your teachers and all those things. So they must be, at least, because, and the reason I say must be is because sometimes we know things that should be there aren't necessarily there. So from a statistical standpoint, there must be information okay, at the end of Form 4, before Banabatsana go Form 5, nebale 100. After Term 1, nebale 75. At the time go kwala the exam, ba 50. So go diragala eng go lo surely bana ga se gore ba ka tsama bothe, you know, so many numbers. And this is an important discussion because I think end of last year or beginning of this year, some private schools are complaining the tutoring center or the tutoring center students.
Yeah.
Yes. And the question becomes, okay, if tutoring centers are taking students from private schools, why is that? Right? Is it because the fees is it because some parents a few children, the first children and the child in the private candidate or transfer thing about go tutoring
free market. It's always that. When you start seeing your customers going elsewhere, instead of crying to the government and to the people, maybe look within yourself. Figure out why. What's going on? What am I doing wrong for people to all of a sudden?
Yes.
Why are they all of a sudden going somewhere else?
Exactly.
So you said this is a form of examination malpractice.
Yes.
So that means it's against the law?
Yes. Examination malpractice is an offense in
Okay.
terms of the Botswana Examinations Council Act.
Okay.
And it attracts about 200 to 500,000 as a fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Something like this.
Yes.
So if I'm sitting right now and I'm a teacher in a school, then I know what these people are doing this. I'm not happy or this is going on. I can
go
come
and
forward.
Report.
Where do I report?
You report to the council.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
You report to the council because they're the ones that need to ensure her examinations in a manner everyone is on an even playing field. So Bonoloja from school XYZ and Bonola gets good marks, and Umpile, who is a private candidate, not because they wanted to, but because they were thrown out by their school, that actually distorts the level of performance from an examination perspective. Yes.
Anything you want to add on to this before we talk about something else? I wanna touch on something else that has to do with schools.
Right, it's a light topic, and I'm like, I don't know, it's such a light topic.
You know what? I think I have a few more questions about it, but I feel like maybe they become a bit. I'm repeating myself, and also I want to give space to the listener as well.
Yeah.
I want guys to, I don't have a kid. I'm not paying school fees. I don't have like a nephew or niece. Thank God all my siblings are rich. They can pay for their own kids.
But then even if they're rich, it affects everyone across the board who effectively can afford to send their children to private schools and things of that nature. Like I said, I haven't heard of it happening at government schools, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening at government schools.
Yeah, we need to look at these students, private students, or is it private or independent students?
They're called private students.
Private students,
yes.
We need to look into especially in college, they tell that they just like, come on, guys, we're all living
they're
in
just
the same
fantastic at what they do.
Okay, yeah. Here's another thing that I discovered, from someone who's a teacher in a private school. Because I just wanted to have a conversation with her when I found this out. I'm like, and she's saying, and this is not examinations fraud, but it's fraud in its own way, malpractice in its own way.
Yes.
She was saying, because Bone, they do their own marking as Matisha Rakir from standard 1 to standard 6. And then standard 7 is where now it's handed over to whatever. It's PSLE, then it if it's Cambridge, then it goes back to Cambridge or whatever the case is, right? She says there's instances where the school, and in particular, like higher ups in the school, have said to teachers, hey, what's going on with your marks here? Your marks are a bit low. This student, just to give the impression that the school and the kids who go to the school are doing really well.
Yes.
Now, she says the problem now comes when the student now takes a transfer to another school.
Yes.
Because they get there and then they do these tests to check out is this kid at this level that they're saying, whatever the case is. And they find, no, the kids are way back. They've fallen way behind. What's going on here?
Yes.
That's problem number one. Instance number one. Instance number two is when now it's time for the final examination, standard 7.
Right?
The true colors are coming out.
Yes. Anxiety and all that.
Or whatever the case is. And you can imagine what that does to the kid.
Yes.
For now, you've been getting these straight A's, you've been getting these B's, and then final exam, the real important one.
Yes.
Now you're getting straight C's, you're getting D's.
Yes.
What would that do to your self-esteem?
Exactly.
The parent as well. You've been paying all this money, you're thinking, no, I don't have to worry about my kid repeating or anything like that. We supplement the reshapo. So yeah, there's a lot of funny business going out there.
Yes, and sometimes because I'll think, okay, it only happened to me, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't happen to other people. And then next thing you have a conversation with the next person about, hey, and you're like, wait, I don't think your kid went to the same school that my kid went to. And they're like, which school did your kid go to? So you then see it's not something that maybe happens just at one school. It has become like a culture. And the question is, if it's this type of culture that is there, what then are the steps that are being taken? And can steps be taken high locally? No one is complaining.
Kind of that's the other thing also. Someone needs to make a noise for something to be done about it.
Exactly. Right. So it's one of those.
Yeah, but ID and guardians, we need to be very careful out there.
Yeah, and the thing is, not to turn this into a social commentary. The thing is, it's not just a thing right? It's something can damage a child so much that they then are not able to become a productive member of society. Imagine a situation all this time, and then go bohelong form 5 akwala BGSC or IGCSE abedi max dia kotase I can't go to a college, I can't go to tertiary, so and so the ripple effects of some of these things are just when you look at them singularly.
It's not a big deal.
Right? Exactly. Like a private candidate, but the ripple effect from a societal standpoint is actually quite high.
And as long as something is not done about it, it's just going to continue.
Exactly.
It gives the guys who are doing this the confidence to do it even more. Yes. So they're just like, oh, okay, we did this with like 2 or 3 students and nothing happened. We can do it with 10. We can do it with 20. Now it becomes the norm.
And imagine, we've seen it, people that we knew were brilliant, and then how about the final exams? You're like, okay, what has happened?
Yeah.
And you can feel it in your heart. Because they know that they're a brilliant student, but then
connect. Okay, let's finish up our conversation with this B. School fees.
Yes.
But I on social media about school fees. I miss school fees. Inflation. COVID. Supply and demand. Is it really expensive? Tell us, what's going on?
I don't know. Hey, I saw some numbers on social media the other day. I was like, right? Look, there are different things that are taken into consideration when setting the school fees.
Yeah.
And the school fees, you find they're set differently based on whether it's a primary private school or a secondary private school, and obviously it's on a certain level of regulation.
Yeah.
But in terms of the law, where the general public is of the opinion, this is too much, they have an avenue to actually approach the relevant permanent secretary, and in this instance it would be the permanent secretary under the Ministry of Education for primary private schools to say, hey, these private schools would say the school fees and the PS or permanent secretary can actually try to mediate to see if there's a certain amount of school fees that can be capped too for that particular school. And if it can't be resolved, then it goes to the minister, and the minister's decision is final in relation to those school fees. But when it comes to secondary private schools, it looks like they submit documents to the minister to sort of like cash flow projections or business plan type of thing. So effectively, where they say how much they want to set as school fees, book levies, uniform, talk about how many teachers they have, how many non-teaching staff, and so on, so that they actually show that's why they have those numbers for the school fees and all these other things.
So to justify why the fees are as high as they are.
School fees 500 pula. This is if we get 50 students, for example, but we have 500 pula, that's what 2.5. Right? Hey, like a lawyer, I'm messing my tat. And then you're like, okay, more 2.5 more. na le ma-teacher a le mabedi and non-teaching staff ba le 3 intend gore ma-teacher ke ba duela 5 pula and then non-teacher staff 2.5 rent the premises gongwe re ka duela bo bokana and things of that nature. So it seems like there's some sort of justification that should be there.
Okay.
But like I always say, people need to go and read the law. That's actually not how it's supposed to happen. So that know what actually happens, or legally what I think happens is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because this is not legal advice.
Okay. Yes. So I thought there's some sort of the regulation, maybe I'm using the wrong language, you'll explain. I thought there were regulations that say, okay, this is charge between this and this, and how can you year on year this and this, or whatever the case is. But from what you're saying, it sounds like every school can just decide, no, another charge 200 pula, another charge 400 per term, whatever per term, and then if no one complains, it just stays that way.
And not only the issue of complaint, but there has to be justification for it. I can't just say I want to charge 100,000 a term, right, for student. There has to be reason behind it. I can't just thumbsuck a figure.
Okay.
Yes.
And as we always say, things are supposed to be done. They are done.
But on the other side, in relation to regulation that deal with these, right?
Yeah.
But they don't say or give like what is the word they use? They don't give a yardstick to say school fees should be between this and this, at least from what I have seen.
Okay.
I could be wrong, and I'm happy to be pointed to like where it says, school is got charge from here to here. Yeah. But I haven't seen that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yo, so can't we all complain on social media?
I guess, and you know why I say this? Remember last year there was a lady who gave birth at a certain government hospital.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I won't say the name because of liability. And they said they had complained at the hospital and there was no assistance. And then they went on social media. The video went viral. I believe I'm one of the people who also talked about it.
Yeah.
And apparently the hospital reached out to talk. I don't know whether the issue ended up being resolved. The assumption is that it did, because we haven't really, or at least I haven't really had an update about how the situation happened.
Yeah.
So it could assist for people to complain. The thing is, if people are going to complain on social media, sometimes there are 2 ways they do it. They either name and shame, and usually when they name and shame, they have to have evidence to back it up.
Yeah.
Because they then going into the arena of defamation.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But if they say that we have this problem with this private school, but they're not saying the name of the school, then it's very difficult for change to come, because
it's just general.
It's just general.
There's no.
And I'm not saying batho basinya batho lina on social media.
Yeah.
And then there are also mechanisms within government for such complaints to say, "Kama, this is what I experienced." The problem is there's very little information. You find, okay, I can complain down on Nayan. Where can I take it? Yes.
Yeah, the school fees one is a bit tricky because, I was thinking to myself, okay, I see the complaints, and let's say on a daily basis, how many complaints do you see? Maybe 3 or 4, right? And then you wonder what a school like Sokolo Sebalebale, beep, beep, whichever school has how many students in there.
Yes.
You're thinking, there's parents who are taking their kids there and they're happy to pay these fees.
Yes, they're more than happy.
Hey, to them, it's like the more I pay, the more my kid is getting.
Yes.
That's the assumption,
and
right?
then private candidate.
Our time is up. Now, I'm always going to ask this question every single discussion that we have at the end. But before we end it, I want to say to the listener, whoever's listening on whatever platform, please reach out to us. Reach out to the BW Thinking Law, different pages on different platforms.
Yes.
We love,
and Bosa,
and Bosa,
yes. Attorneys.
Please go on there as well. We want to get your feedback. We want to hear what you guys think about the stuff that we're talking about. But I'm always going to ask this question with regards to Yanatupikate. So as someone who's affected by Botswana law every day, what do you want me to think about concerning examinations, malpractice?
I think I want people to think about the bigger picture, right? Some of these societal issues that we complain about aren't necessarily things that start big. They tend to start from something very small and then they escalate into something massive. So you find, we have certain laws there and there might be beautiful laws, but unless we use them and unless there are facilities at the necessary place that allow us to use them, then we cannot do anything about it. So if there's an issue where you see instances of examination fraud, not necessarily on the part of the school, but the student as well, you need to do something because the ripple effect is actually felt quite massively.
All right, that's it. We're done. Botswana Thinking Law, the podcast. Yeah, it's been B by herself on social media.
Exactly.
Those videos are still coming though. Still,
yes,
right?
They're still coming. So the intention is that this coming Monday, the first post will be episode 1, season 1 of the podcast, right? And then Tuesday will be something else. Wednesday, we've already set dates for the employment law seminar and for the estate planning seminar. So some of the posts will be talking about the seminars and things of that nature.
Tell me, where do you get this extra time, fam? Like, what
I
do you mean?
I have to make extra time. There's so many things in the works, Carlos. So many, one of these days where I'm like, hey, Carlos, this is,
this is what we're doing.
Yeah,
no, absolutely inspirational, B. Thank you so much, man. Botswana Thinking Law Podcast, Season 1, Episode 1. We're back next week, Monday.
We're back next week, Monday. And if people want to suggest topics as well that they want us to talk about, we're more than happy to take that on. And, they'll find out the next topic on Monday.
We're out of here on that note. Thank you, B.
Thanks, Carlos.
We're out here.